What's up guys, Justin here with the SketchUp Free Essentials. So in today's video, we're going to continue our series on modeling for beginners in the free version of SketchUp by learning how to model a house in this version. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. All right, so to start off, what we want to do is we want to go to app.sketchup.com. And when we do that, you're either going to get a page that looks like this, or you're going to get just a 3D view. In this case, this is the page where you can kind of manage your different models. And what I want to do is I want to click on the option for Create New. Now you can click on the little drop down right here and pick your own set of units. But in this case, architectural feet and inches is what I want. I'm just going to click on Create New. And so when we do that, that's going to create a new SketchUp model right here. Before you do anything else, I do recommend that you come up here and you just rename this. So I'm just going to click on this button right here. It's going to ask us where we want to save it, and I'm going to pick a folder. So in this case, I'm going to click in here, and I've got folders set up for this. So you can create either a new folder or you can just save the model in a folder you already have. But in this case, for example, I'm going to call this 02 House. And I'm going to click on Save Here. And so once I do that, I'm ready to start modeling my house in SketchUp. And so the first thing we want to do, because we're going to create a very simple house right now, is we just want to model out the footprint of our house. And so to do that, I'm going to use the line tool. So I'm going to start by clicking on the line tool, or actually I recommend that you tap the L key on your keyboard in order to turn that tool on. But I'm just going to mouse over the origin right here. Notice how I get this little inference point, and I'm just going to single click. Again, don't click and drag, actually single click in here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in a value of 30 feet. And notice how I want to move my mouse until it aligns with this green axis before I do this, so that I'm drawing along the axes. We're going to type in a value of 30 feet. And then notice how this is automatically going to continue this line over here. You can also tap the L key and click again in order to do this. But I'm going to type in a value of 20 feet right here and hit the Enter key. So now what I can do is I can orbit around with my middle mouse button, and I'm going to either draw a line down here until this aligns with this corner point. Notice how I'm getting the little inference right here. That just shows me that things are being drawn so that they align with the other point over here. You could also tap the R key on your keyboard and draw a rectangle like this in order to draw the footprint of my house. But now I've got the footprint of my house ready to go, and the next thing I want to do is I want to extrude this up. So to extrude it up, I'm going to use the push-pull tool. So I'm going to tap the P key on my keyboard. Notice how when I do that, that's going to give me this little icon right here where I can single click and move my mouse up. Again, don't click and drag when you do this, because if you click and drag whenever you let up on your mouse, it's going to close off the tool. But if you single click, then you can move your mouse in a direction and then type in a value. So in this case, I'm going to type in a value of 10 feet. Right here. And notice how I accidentally typed in 10 inches. So we're going to type in 10 and then a feet sign and hit the Enter key. Now, what I want to do is I want to model my roof. And so there's a few different ways that you can do this. So you could draw a line across here and then use the Move tool. So I'm going to tap the M key, single click and move my mouse like this. I don't necessarily like this though, because it's not as precise. What I want to do instead, I'm going to tap the E key and erase this line, is I actually want to use the protractor tool. So I'm going to mouse over this, click on protractor, and notice how as I mouse over these different faces, this is kind of rotating. Well, what I want to do is I want to tap the left arrow key. Notice how when I tap this, the left arrow key, it's going to lock this to the green axis. And then I'm going to click on this corner point, mouse over this edge, and then click again, and then move my mouse up. And notice how when I do this, I can type in a value. So in this case, I want to type in a value of 30 degrees, like this. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the protractor here. So I'm going to mouse over this point, click, type in a value of 30 degrees, and hit the Enter key. And notice how I'm tapping the space key to deactivate my tools. So the space key, what it does is effectively it activates the select tool. So notice how if I tap space, it changes this to the select tool. What that also does is it closes out of any tool that you have active. So now I can tap the L key and I can just draw lines along this guide so that I have this face right here. So now I've got this kind of roughed out. Now I'm going to tap the E key and I'm going to click and drag across these guides in order to delete them out. And now we're ready to tap the P key, single click, and move our mouse in order to push pull across this face. Now, in a minute, what we're going to do is we're going to erase out this edge so that these faces merge together. But we don't want to do that yet because we want to model out a crucial detail of our roof. So if I was to click off of this and then tap the F key, what that's going to do is that's going to activate the offset tool. You can also find that by clicking in here and finding offset. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mouse over this face, and I'm going to single click, and I'm going to move my mouse by whatever the thickness of my roof assembly is going to be. In this case, I'm going to type in a value of 4 inches and hit the enter key. So 4, enter, like this. Notice what that did is that offset this out all the way around. Well, in this case, I just want this face right here, so I can tap the E key and click and drag across this in order to erase this face. Now, one thing that I want is I want this to just continue like this. So I'm going to scroll up with my mouse wheel to zoom in, tap the L key, and then single click. Well, notice how if I move my mouse in this direction, it's going to allow me to extend this edge at the same angle that it's in here like this. Then I can also single click, move my mouse up like this. And now I'm going to erase out these edges by tapping the E key and clicking across these. And we'll do the same thing over here. So erase like this. And notice what that's done is that's given us a face in here that's going to act as our roof. And so what I want to do is I want to push pull this in 2 different directions. So first I'm going to push pull it forward. So I'm going to tap P, click on this face, and type in a value of 12 inches because I want this to have an overhang on the front of my house. Then I'm going to orbit around using my middle mouse button, and I'm going to single click on this face and push pull it back to this back face right here. Then I'm going to mouse over this, single click again, and I'm going to extrude this another 12 inches. Now we can tap the E key and erase out these edges right here. Now, what we can do in this case, and we're not going to worry too much about grouping geometry or anything like that in this video, I just want you to understand the basics. So we're going to tap the E key and erase out this edge and erase out this edge like this. So now we've got the basics of a house in here. Now, there's a few different ways that we might do the next step. So in the next video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about drawing more of a floor plan type situation. In this case, we're just going to assume these exterior walls only have a singular thickness to them. And so what we need to do is we need to model a door and a window. And so to do that, I'm going to use the tape measure tool, and specifically with the tape measure tool, I'm going to use a function called guides. And so what a guide is, and we already did this with the protractor, what a guide is one of those dotted lines that's in here that isn't really geometry, it's more just like a marker. It's like snapping a chalk line out on a job site. But to activate it, we can tap the T key or click on the tape measure tool, and notice how there's a little plus next to that tape measure tool. So if I tap the control key, notice how the plus goes away. So I want to make sure that plus is showing. That puts me in create guide mode. And so what I can do is I can mouse over this edge and click on it and then move my mouse and I can type in a value. So in this case, I'm going to type in 3'6" and hit the enter key. That's going to draw up guide 3'6" off of this corner. And then I'm going to single click again, type in a value of 3 feet. Right here, and then I'll create a guide off of the bottom just by clicking on that bottom line. Now, one thing you might run into is if you click on a point like this, notice how it gives you a different kind of guide, right? It just gives you a guide that just goes to a point right here. So you want to make sure you're not clicking on the corner point. You want to make sure you're clicking somewhere along the edge or along this line right here. And we're going to type in a value of 7 feet, hit the enter key right here. Well, now what that's going to allow me to do is that's going to allow me to zoom in and start working on a door. And so in this situation, I want to draw a rectangle. So I'm going to tap the R key, single click, and move my mouse like this. Notice what that does is that creates door geometry that's separate from my wall geometry, like this. Now, in this situation, we're going to assume that our frame is going to be outside of this door leaf, not inside this door leaf. So I'm just going to tap the F key to offset this. And I'm going to offset this by a value of 2 inches right here. Now, notice when I do that, that offsets this outside of the bottom here, so you can come in here and erase out this extra geometry. And so in this situation, what I'm going to do is just tap the P key and I'm going to extrude this out a little bit. So I'm going to assume that the door frame is going to extend out another inch or so. And then I'm just going to select the whole thing, right click, and I'm going to make it a group. And so when I make it a group, basically what I've done is I've separated off this geometry from the rest of my model like this, so it's not sitting in there merging with the remaining geometry. Now when we do that, you may need to come in here and I'm going to right click and hide this door, and you may need to draw across this opening again and then erase out this bottom edge just so that you actually have an opening. And then we're just going to do an unhide all. And so to do that, there's actually no right click in here and no menu to do this. So we're going to mouse over here. We're going to click on the option for display. And we're going to click on unhide all. That's going to unhide our door right here. And in this case, what I want to do is now I want to model a window. And so in order to model a window, I'm going to use my guides again. So I'm going to there's actually an option in here under display for delete all guides. I'm going to use this to get rid of those guides. Then I'm going to use the tape measure tool and I'm going to draw on this wall right here, and notice how I can click on the bottom line, hold the shift key to lock this inference, and then click again. That's going to basically create a guide that's the same height as my window. And then I'm going to draw a guide over here that's 4 feet. I'm going to draw another guide off of this top that's whatever the height of my window is. In this case, I'm going to say 5 feet. And then I'm going to say that this window is going to be 6 feet wide. So what I've done is I've basically roughed out the size of this opening. Well, now I can use the rectangle tool by tapping R, and we're just going to click and click in order to create this opening. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this face, tap the F key, and I'm going to offset it in by a value of 2 inches right here. So I've basically given myself a window frame. And so before I extrude this to 3D, what I want to do is I want to select it all. So I'm just going to drag a selection box around it. I'm going to right click and I'm going to click on the option to make group. And in this case, notice how when I did that, this group is actually bigger because I accidentally picked up geometry in the back right here. So I'm just going to do a Control Z and then click and drag across this again. And you want to make sure that you're not accidentally picking up that additional geometry over here in the back. But now I'm just going to right click and make this whole thing a group. And so when I do that, now I have the ability to come in here and start working on my model. So I'm going to double click in this opening right here. Notice how that takes me into edit group mode. You can also right click and do an edit group as well. But in this case, I'm going to push pull this out right here. And we're going to say this is going to have a value of 1 inch. And in this situation, my window is very simple. And that's fine. We can definitely do that this way, but I'm going to click on this and delete out this line right here, because what I want to do is I want to make my window a little more complex. And so in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rotate around and I'm going to double click on the back side of this window and I'm just going to push pull this back another inch right here. And so when I do that, notice how now this kind of healed in the face on this wall, which is a little bit weird. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw another rectangle across the back like this. Whoops, you want to make sure that you're actually on the wall when you do that. So you don't want to be on the corners right here, but I'm basically going to draw this across here and delete out this face. So now I've got this window that I'm in here working with. And in this case, we want to take this whole thing and we want to model out almost like a window slider. So the first thing I want to do before I do anything else is I want to triple click on this window, right click, and I want to group this. So now I have a group within a group right? Notice how this isn't raw geometry anymore. The reason why we want to do that is because I don't want the two panes that we're about to draw to merge together. So then I'm going to use the line tool, and we're going to go ahead and we'll just draw a line to the midpoint of this object. So notice I'm holding the shift key in order to lock that inference like this. But now I'm just going to draw a rectangle from this corner to this corner up here, like this. And so notice how that's given me kind of a piece or a window that's in here. I'm just going to offset this in by maybe like 1 inch, like this. I'm going to push pull it like this. And now I've basically got a slider of a window. Now there's different things you can do with this too. Like I can double click, select this face and make it a group by right clicking, and then I can move this so that it's kind of centered in the pane right here. But what I want to do with all of this is I want to triple click to select all this geometry. I'm going to do a shift click to select this face as well, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to make this pane a component. And so in this case I'm going to call this glass pane right here. Now we make this a component because we're going to create a copy of it. And so I'm going to use the move tool in copy mode right here. So what you do is you activate the move tool by tapping the M key, and then you tap Control to go into copy mode. So notice how when I do that, that's creating a copy of this object right here. And so I'm able to copy this from this point to this point by clicking and then clicking again. Again, remember, copy mode is activated by tapping the Control key right here. Now, one thing that you might do if you're creating multiple copies of this window is you might right click on it and make this a component as well. And in this case, I'm just going to call this a window. But what that does is that means that if you make a change, so say I was to double click in here like this, notice how if I click in here and I push pull on this, any copies of that component are going to basically update together. So that's just me setting this up so that if I make one change, then it's really easy to reflect that change across all of those windows. So in this situation, for example, say we wanted another window. So I'm just going to use the move tool in copy mode, move my mouse over like this, and say I was to create a second window. Now those are going to be linked in the sense that if I change one, all of them are going to change. And I do want to make sure that I come in here and draw a rectangle across this face like this. Single click on the face to delete this out so that I don't have walls in there blocking my windows. But now, and I'm going to delete all my guides in the display section over here. Well, now what I want to do is I want to create or add materials to this model. So to do that, you can just activate the paint bucket tool by tapping the B key on your keyboard, or by clicking in here and finding the paint bucket tool. But notice how when I do that, that pops up the materials section over here. Now, I'm going to click in here and I'm going to find different materials. So in this case, I'm going to scroll into the roofing section right here, and we're going to add shingles by clicking on this and then clicking on this surface right here. So notice what that does is that applies a material to the face in here. And so if you were to go into the entity info, select this face, notice how this is going to show me that this face has a roofing shingles asphalt material. Now, interestingly, this also gives you the area of roofing. So if you did want to estimate how much roofing area you had in here, you could just select both of these faces. But now I'm going to pick another material by scrolling down and picking one of the siding options. And in this case, we're going to say that this house is going to have maybe a brick siding to it. So I'm just going to click in here like this. Notice how I'm able to apply that brick material to all of the faces. And that looks fine. However, it's a little bit boring, right? In the sense that you probably wouldn't have just like solid brick like this in the real world. I mean, you might, but you probably wouldn't. Well, one of the things that you can do is you can split off these faces in here in order to split. So if I was to draw a line across this face right here, for example, notice how that splits this into two objects. Well, I could apply a different material onto that face. But in this case, we've already got the bottom lines in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select them all by clicking and dragging across them. I'm going to use the Move tool in copy mode. I'm going to tap the Control key. So I selected the edges, tap M, click, and then tap Control, and that's going to put you in copy mode. And I can hold the Shift key in order to lock this vertical inference. But if I move this up, notice what that's going to do is that's going to split this material out all the way around your house. Well, now I can come in here and I can add a material like this to the top of my house. So you can't really edit the materials right now, but I think you can upload your own materials in here. We'll explore that in a future video. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and leave this the way that it is. But one thing I would like to do, because this looks very flat, so what I would like to do is I would like to create a cap that's going to sit on top of this brick, you know, like a stone cap. So I'm just going to select all of these edges, and I'm actually going to use the Move tool in copy mode. I'm going to tap the Control key, and I'm going to move this down. And so when I move this down, what I've done is I've created a copy, and I can tap the F key on my keyboard and offset this out by, we'll call it maybe 2 inches, or maybe 4 inches. So I'm going to type in a value of 4 right here. Notice how I've got 2 edges in here. Well, I'm just going to draw a line across these 2 ends. That's going to heal a face in here, and then I can pull it down in order to create this cap. We're going to say this cap maybe has a thickness of 2 inches. But then I'm just going to triple click on it, right click, and I'm going to make that a group. Now I'm going to move that back up. So I'm just going to tap the M key, click on this corner, and hold the Shift key and move my mouse until I can inference to the bottom of my windows, like this. And that cap may be a little bit big. So maybe what we're going to do is we're going to undo this, and instead of offsetting this by 4 inches, I'm just going to triple click on it, maybe offset it by 2 inches, like this. Draw a little line, draw a little line, pull it by maybe 1 inch, triple click to select all, make it a group, and then we're going to move it up like this. And you may need to come in here because this looks like it overlaps with your door frame. So you can just double click and then tap the P key and pull this back like this so that it's not overlapping with your door. But now we have a very simple house. And one other thing we might do is just double click into this group until we get to this face. And I'm going to click on the option for glass and mirrors. And we're just going to add the translucent glass blue and apply that to our windows. So now notice that those windows are actually translucent and you can see into your house. But that's a quick, easy way to model a house in SketchUp free. All right, so in the next video we're going to talk a little bit about how you can create floor plans in SketchUp free. Leave a comment below, let me know if you have any questions about anything we talked about in this video. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.